Welcome everyone to our April Lunch and Learn. We're going to have a sneak peek at the progress and kind of hear the backstory about the Milwaukee Athletic Club, which is such a highly anticipated project in downtown Milwaukee. It's one that's close to me as well as a long time member of the Milwaukee Athletic Club. I also got married there and also miss it as a frequent and inviting lunch place. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today. The format for our Lunch and Learn, which is sponsored by Landmark Credit Union, will go from noon till 1 o'clock. I think we'll have a little bit more time today for question and answer, but please make sure that you ask those questions in the chat feature, which I'll explain in the next slide. This Lunch and Learn series features our members, features interesting projects, interesting concepts that our members bring forth. So if you have ideas, please let us know. Again, this is the April 19th one. So everyone on this call is muted, except for our presenters, and our video is disabled. So just in case that's not coming clear to you, that's how this is working today. Please use the chat function or the question and answer in the bottom of your Zoom. I think you guys are all pretty Zoom up to speed, if that makes sense. Or you can text me or send me an email during today's conversation. Again, today's Lunch and Learn sponsor is Landmark Credit Union. Without their support, we couldn't do these programs. So thank you to them. We are also grateful to our annual sponsors listed here. There are so many to thank. Please, as you are going about your day and doing your business, please make sure to refer to this list and this awesome showing of sponsors, and please reference them, reach out to them, and use them for your business. Just a little forecast here for some of our upcoming events. CI 101 is starting on May 3rd. This is a great baseline financial analysis class through CCIM. Happy to answer any questions that you have about this class. Many of our members are CCIMs. It's a great foundational class. It doesn't require you to go to the CI 102 or anything like that. So highly recommend it. That will be in person from May 3rd to May 6th. We do have an in-person happy hour for Cinco de Mayo on May 5th at Bayshore. We also have another online Lunch and Learn, and that will be the state of banking. So we're grateful to Steve McGuire from US Bank for setting that one up. And then we just announced our panelists, or some of our panelists, for our 1 year later, 10 years beyond event. We have a great panel of CEOs who are going to be reacting to our futurists' comments on May 12th. Again, that is an in-person event with the option to view that virtually. And so lots of great opportunities to network and to learn coming up in the next couple of months. And today, I want to introduce our presenter. The way today's program is going to work, Tony Janowick, who is the President and Chief Manager for Interstate Development Partners, is going to go through kind of the update on what's happening with the MAC. We gave him a series of questions. He's going to hit a lot of those. And then I have a number of questions, and then hope that you all do too. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tony. I'm going to stop share and then let you take it away.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate the invite. Hello, everybody. Hope your Monday is off to a stellar start. So I assembled a little overview for everybody, and then I've left plenty of time for questions and open dialogue. We're going to do kind of a top-down walkthrough of some of the unique characteristics of the Milwaukee Athletic Club project. And since this is CAR W, not only will I address some of the more kind of interesting member-oriented features of the project, but also some of the actual real estate development challenges, and a pretty light dive into how the sausage is actually being made here. My partner, Josh Jeffers, apologized that he couldn't make it today. He had a last-minute conflict. This is a co-development project between myself, Interstate Development Partners, and Jay Jeffers and Company. So we've been at this project for many years, it feels. I think we actually started with an idea in open dialogue with the Milwaukee Athletic Club Board of Directors to see how there could be an arrangement to bring in different capital sources to renovate the Milwaukee Athletic Club. And what started as a simple idea became very quickly nearly a $75 million rehabilitation project. And before I jump into that, some of the things that I don't think were front and center when we started this that we learned very quickly is that for Josh and I as real estate developers, we quickly realized this was not a traditional real estate development project. And if you can see where I'm moving the little laser pointer, there is, as many people on this call know, there's no such thing as a simple real estate development project. However, they can be a lot simpler and cleaner than the Milwaukee Athletic Club. Some of the elements that are, I would say, more normal in a real estate development project is that you can have somewhat of a simple debt and equity capital stack, right? Many times you have a construction loan and you have some sort of private equity investment. The role of the real estate developer typically ends up being a landlord-tenant relationship. So we may build an apartment building, we might build an office building, and from that point forward, we engage the brokerage community, many of whom are on this call today, and we lease up our buildings, and we or a third party manages them. And as time goes on, we really become more of an asset manager and serve as a traditional landlord. The other thing in putting together projects is that for sourcing debt and equity and a variety of other closing requirements, there generally are a lot of market-based comparables, right? An apartment building, plenty of market rate comparables for a Class A apartment building downtown Milwaukee. Office rents, Class B, Class A, amenities. There is generally no shortage of comparisons when you put together, kind of a normal asset class. By comparison, the Milwaukee Athletic Club development is kind of the polar opposite in all of those characteristics. Number one, it is a historic tax credit project, one of the largest historic tax credit projects in southeastern Wisconsin's history. We have not 2 capital sources, but 7. And those 7 capital sources have to play nice with each other, which is not always the case. Also, inherent in our relationship with the Milwaukee Athletic Club is we actually, as the developers, have certain obligations with respect to the operating business of the Milwaukee Athletic Club itself once we finish the construction. So we serve a little more than a landlord-tenant relationship in this mix, and that is kind of an entirely separate suite of responsibilities. You may have seen recently, we announced in the news that we hired Joe Kurth as our COO. Joe has an extraordinary hospitality background, former GM of the Pfister, most recently. And so he's actually the one coming in and taking the lead on the operating business side of the equation here. And then last but not least, there really aren't any market comps for the Milwaukee Athletic Club. Originally, we combined a 92-key 4.5-star hotel with a 45,000 square foot private athletic club with 17,000 square feet of public event space and a full service restaurant. Not a whole lot for the appraisers to work off of on that one. So early 2020, about a year ago today, we were about 80% done with demolition. Construction was well underway. Jeffers and myself had advanced most of the pre-development costs, which is not atypical in a historic rehabilitation project. And so we were right about at our closing for that very complicated closing stack with our senior construction lender, our tax credit investor, our bridge lender, and our private equity. And of course, we all know what happened a year ago today. The COVID-19 pandemic slammed into Milwaukee as it did with the rest of the world. And unfortunately, it hit the MAC pretty hard. After we kind of picked ourselves up off the ground, we started to put the project back together. Project literally came to a screeching halt. And you can see what appears very simple on this screen here is our original stacking plan versus what we pivoted to. In simple terms, we had to replace the hotel and the full service restaurant with something that could actually be financed, which turned out to be apartments. The rest of the club space remained relatively unchanged. So a little deeper look at that. Why did COVID-19 kill the MAC project the way it was arranged a year ago? Well, our senior lender basically called and said, we're not lending money right now to hospitality projects. We want to kind of wait and see and find out how long this pandemic is going to impact hotels and restaurants. Well, within a couple of weeks of suspending the closing, I think we all realized, and seems to be the case today, that, you know, we knew it was going to be years before the hotel industry would recover. And while we thought the restaurant industry would recover faster, at the moment with government shutdowns, you know, restaurants weren't real active at the time. Well, we really couldn't sit around and wait. We had and still have 700 active MAC members wondering when their new club is going to be built. And so we went back to the drawing board and figured out a way that we could replace the hotel and restaurant component with luxury level market rate apartments. The key, and I'll show you a little bit deeper detail on this, the key that made this whole thing work is that although the transition from a hotel-oriented project to apartments allowed us to reduce our project cost by nearly $12 million, we actually lost just a fraction of our tax credit equity. And I'll come back to why that's important in a few slides later. So here we were, new project, trying to get out the starting blocks again. It took us almost an entire 9-month period to go from that shutdown to our actual closing, which finally occurred in early December of 2020. And then in January, we immediately started construction, and things have been full speed ahead ever since, with a December completion of this year. A few of the constraints that are unusual to this project is that I mentioned it is a historic tax credit project. So all of the renovation plans, the use of the spaces within the building have to be approved in advance by the National Park Service, who administers the historic preservation requirements for the federal historic tax credit program. We obviously have project cost and ongoing operating sustainability that has to be intact with our program plan. And because this entire project is oriented around creating the new home for the Milwaukee Athletic Club, athletic and social spaces, we had to retain our MAC member programming. And all three of these requirements and constraints have to work together. So I'm gonna do a quick top-down run through the building here. As part of the original plans, we were building a new rooftop member bar and lounge. Because the first floor of the building had a full service production restaurant, the food service at the rooftop was supported by some of that prep in the first floor restaurant. But we don't have a first floor restaurant at the moment. We hope to in the future, but not when we open the doors. So in order to provide a solid rooftop member dining experience, we had to go from what was a support kitchen on the rooftop to moving the full production kitchen to the 13th floor. Sounds simple, takes a lot of space, a lot of MEP, a lot of changes. That actually knocked out what was previously going to be on the 13th floor, which were our indoor golf swing suites. And so we had to find a new spot for those. And we moved those to the 3rd floor, and I'll show you where. Moving down to the 12th floor, all the way down to the 8th floor, are where we took out the hotel and replaced it with 52 market rate apartments. They range from studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom to 3 bedrooms, high-end finishes, unparalleled amenities, 24-hour concierge services, and to support the continued demand for overnight guest rooms for MAC members and visiting members from other clubs, we have a handful of Airbnb hospitality suites. Kind of a not so funny, but now funny side story is that all of the hotel furniture was custom designed and manufactured from around the world. And so prior to the project shutting down last year, we had already ordered 3 full hotel guest rooms of this really cool custom hotel furniture. About 6 months ago, it all arrived here in Wisconsin, and it's all sitting in a storage unit out in Waukesha. So our Airbnb hospitality suites will be fully furnished with this custom hotel furniture that was originally designed for the 4.5-star hotel project. Moving down to the 7th floor and 6th floor are nearly 30,000 square feet of modern, best-in-class athletic facilities, including a 6,000 square foot functional training Group X turf area, fully restored basketball court that has a convertible feature to convert to 2 pickleball courts. Seasonal rooftop programming, rooftop sunrise yoga, afternoon lawn games, things of that nature. Several thematic Group X rooms for yoga, TRX, spa, dedicated spin studio, a dedicated fully equipped Pilates studio, all contained on the 6th and 7th floor of the building. 5th floor are the state-of-the-art luxury caliber spa-inspired locker rooms, men's and women's, dedicated finished steam technology. This is by far the most advanced steam technology that we found. We've searched far and wide for it, and an actual Himalayan salt wall infused saunas. We are restoring the magnificent historic event space in the building. There's over 17,000 square feet of event space, which will be available for weddings and special events, corporate events, nonprofit events, including the 325 seat grand ballroom and the fully restored 150 seat Wiccan Lounge and adjacent Bally Lounge as well. I mentioned the Golf Swing Suites, a new program to the MAC, and something that'll be really highly utilized, we believe, is 3 essentially indoor Topgolf swing suites that are designed and installed on the 3rd floor, immediately connected to the historic Elephant Bar, which is also being fully rehabbed. The golf swing suites will be available for pro golf instruction, as well as, you know, evening entertainment, whether people have played golf or they want to play all of the other range of games that are programmed into the software technology. If any of you have ever been to an outdoor Topgolf, you may notice about 3% of the people there have actually ever swung a golf club. That's okay. It's about way more than golf, but it is about pro golf as well. So you can see the finish is about the golf simulators plus some lounge furniture. You can reserve it for bar, roll in a bar card, apps, things of that nature. Members will have the ability to store their clubs on site during the off season if they don't have them at their club or their home during the summer months. Moving down to the 2nd floor, really exciting addition is a program of incorporating kind of the best-in-class co-working features for a member-only co-working lounge. So we have a hospitality grab-and-stay bar with grab-and-go items, morning coffee barista, evening beer, wine, different catered events. This space comes equipped with concierge services for coordinating meeting rooms, coordinating meetings, different business activities that members may have. And then we also incorporated a handful of private office suites available. So we have a couple of them leased already. There are 9 private office suites remaining that can house anywhere from 2 to 8 people. And those will be pre-leasing in the fall of 2021. Moving to the 1st floor, we have the fully restored historic lobby. And there are 2 available retail spaces on the 1st floor. One is about a 1,600 square foot retail space that we would like to see a spa-oriented salon user as a tenant. And then the location of what was previously our full-service restaurant is now a white box, ready to go 4,500 square foot restaurant space with most of the kitchen intact from a mechanical standpoint. And that leaves us at the lower level Aquatic Center. As you noticed when I went through the 6th floor, for those of you who may recall, there was a pool on the 6th floor that has been filled in, and that's where the new functional training turf area was shown. We are restoring the lower level pool, converting it to a saltwater purification system, and adding all sorts of resort spa-inspired amenities to it. Cabana-style day lockers that are suitable for family use, Saturday morning swim lessons with the kids, things of that nature. We're adjusting the depth of the pool so that it actually works for aquatic programming like pool board yoga or pool workouts. So we're really bringing a lot of aquatic programming that was not able to exist in the building historically. So here's the fun part. And for anybody who likes to kind of geek out on how does this actually work? Well, here's the nuts and bolts of it. I mentioned we reduced the project cost by about $12 million. How do we do that? Well, when you build a hotel, there are a lot of expenses associated with furniture, fixtures, equipment. There's an enormous amount of working capital because you have nearly 200 employees in a project like this. And there are another several $1 million of operating supplies that are required to start up a hotel. What's interesting is none of those expenses generate tax credits. So when Josh and I were putting this project kind of back together, we had this very memorable and very optimistic aha moment when we said, wait a minute, we can carve out about $12 million of, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. We can carve out about $12 million of project cost, but we're only going to lose about $800,000 in tax credit equity. And what that means is we could source substantially less senior debt. We could source substantially less private equity and utilize some different financing mechanisms. For example, we brought in a ground lease component to this project, and the combination of that financial engineering and preservation of the vast majority of our tax credits while tearing out about $12 million of project cost made this project work, even though we now can rely on about $12 million a year less in gross revenue. And so this is a slide that I was showing. I had them flip, my apologies. But under the hotel plan, this project was projected to generate about $23 million a year of gross revenue. As you can imagine, trying to get the tax credit investor and senior lender and our private equity investors to kind of buy into that when hotels were shutting down and restaurants were shutting down, pretty tough sell. And so we just ripped it all out and said, well, we know we can rent apartments. We don't think we can rent hotel rooms. That was the original, that was the big shift. We said, we're not going to rely on as much food and beverage revenue. We're just going to strip all that down. As a matter of fact, we're not even counting on having a wedding in the building until 2023. We actually do have one booked for May of 22, but we didn't put it in our pro forma. We stripped out all of the revenue that if you looked at COVID, you could say, okay, I get it. This can still work. And we changed our operating model kind of completely from head to toe. And so what used to be a project that had nearly 200 employees in the building now has, less than half of that as part of the operating plan. That's my Reader's Digest condensed version of what we've been up to for the past year. Like I said, the project is fully under construction. We are on track for a mid-December completion, at which point we'll be inviting our first apartment residents, move-in, office tenants, and of course, most importantly, the over 700 and growing MAC members back into their original home.
Great. All right. Well, we have some time for some questions, and I started out with about 15 and now I have like 35. So we'll see how this goes. But really, this is an opportunity for anybody listening on the call to chime in with their questions. It feels like this is a very transparent project, all the way from your financials to the way that this works. You've been so forthcoming and so transparent with this. We really appreciate it. So I am going to get started and just ask a couple of things that you kind of zoomed over. I noticed there was an office component. So you went from a co-working space to office lease. How much office space are we talking about here that has yet to be leased, or are you looking for a tenant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the entire second floor of the building, which is roughly 13,000 square feet in total, was originally going to be 100% member co-working, and it still is, but we had programmed some of the co-working rentals like the individual desk or the 2-person office in 70 square feet, tiny glass cubicle. Basically replicating some of the features that you would find in a WeWork or an Industrious or a traditional co-working firm. COVID really, really negatively impacted that whole industry as well. So what we did is, instead of having, for example, what was originally 80 private desks that could be rented on a per month basis, we replaced that with larger private offices. So we went from 80 private desks to 13 private offices, and we have 9 remaining. So these are now, 200 to 400 square feet private offices that could handle one to 4 people, depending on furniture configuration. And we believe that that's going to be a much better fit for demand when we reopen the building. Those are all on the same floor as the common member co-working, which has a range of furnishings, everything from dining banquettes for a quick lunch to more of library table style furniture for showing up, flipping open your laptop and getting some work done in a quiet environment and bump into some of your fellow MAC members.
Okay, yeah, because I remember there were a couple offices, but they were kind of all over the place in the last design. We do have a question about the historic tax credit, and I remember working with you guys on that. This project obviously took place before the cap, right? The $3.5 million cap. Let's just say that there was a cap. Would this project have happened? Would you figured out how to bring in an 8th capital partner, or what's your thinking on that?
The short answer is I would have never imagined this project could have survived COVID, frankly. I mean, this project was not on life support last March. It was dead. Like it was completely dead last March. To speculate whether we could figure something out had we had the $3.5 million cap, I hazard to say no, but I don't know how in the world we could make it work if we would have been under that cap. Getting in literally weeks before that cap took place and having our Part 2 submittal approved and having our contract from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp was absolutely a critical milestone. I can honestly say I don't think Josh and I would have continued trying to work on the project had we not had that secured, had that milestone secured, which we did secure well before we had a formal arrangement with the Milwaukee Athletic Club. We did that completely on speculation, just because we knew without it, we nor anybody else would really make a whole lot of headway. And that deadline was fast approaching back at that time.
No, that's well, that's good to know. I know, Peter, thanks for that question. It's very important to lots of redevelopment projects in our city. So what about this design? So you talked about, if COVID COVID scenario and all of the cards weren't as they actually were, what are the aspects of the design or your financing that allowed you to pivot in the way that you did? I mean, that picture of that bomb, I mean, it's perfect. It was a perfect graphic, not just for this project, but for so many other things. So what was unique about this that allowed you to pivot so successfully?
Well, what was really unique is we maintained, roughly 90% of our historic tax credit equity with the exact same tax credit partners. We have fantastic tax credit partners. So Twain Financial is our federal investor, US Bank is our state historic tax credit buyer. Both partners stuck in with us the entire time, even though people were exhausted over this project, I'm sure. But they maintained support throughout all of 2020, even when we didn't have answers of what are we going to do next, right? That was probably the core, is that we kept our tax credit partnership together. Along the way, our senior lender also stuck with us. Now their construction loan, went from 37 million down to 22 million, right? But we could do that because of the project cost adjustment. And if not for our senior lender and Twain and US Bank sticking together, I think it would have been next to impossible to restart with new capital partners. So that was probably the most important element in terms of our capital stack is we just had the same partners, right? And everybody was still like trying to make this work. We then incorporated some really creative financing that was new to the project to make it work. One was an equity bridge that the developers put together in kind of a unique structure. The other is that we were I would say the third borrower under this new ground lease structure that a new provider came up with. We're the third one that closed in the entire country. Ground leases are not new at all. This one is a very unique ground lease structure that actually acts more as a bridge loan, so to speak. So it has some interesting takeout and refinance options, unlike a traditional ground lease. And when you start to layer into the capital stack, it becomes one of those things where it's not any single one that was the silver bullet. It's that the incremental value of adding in the ground lease, right? We were able to slightly adjust our tax credit pricing by a couple of pennies. We were able to structure some of our, with the lower senior debt, we got a slightly better interest rate. And when you start dealing with pennies here and pennies there on a $60 million capital stack, and we're able to cut your private equity investment in half, all of a sudden, the yield required by each capital source starts to take shape. And you have a brand new project that looks physically, the completed project looks very similar to what it was before, but financially looks like a completely brand new project as compared to where you started.
And just a reminder, so this received the tax credit. Were there other city credits or other state credits that were tied to this project?
Nope. No, it's just the state and federal tax credits. There's no other, soft money sources coming in at all. So
what would have happened if this wouldn't have worked out? What happens to the building? What happens to the entity?
I stopped having those nightmares like 6 months ago, so I can't even answer that.
Perfect. I'm good with it. Can you comment on the parking situation? I know that was a big controversy in terms of, selling the parking and what's the access to parking going to be like for members? Because obviously, you're right on the streetcar line. You're within walking distance from 80% of the downtown population. What's that conversation like, and what is that parking?
Yeah, so when the parking garage that is located adjacent to the Milwaukee Athletic Club building, which I also own and acquired from the MAC in 2013. As part of that acquisition, the MAC was afforded an easement for long-term perpetual parking rights in the garage. So the MAC has priority rights to use up to 100% of the parking spaces there. Historically, even when the club was still pretty active in 2015, 16, 17, 18, the MAC never ran out of parking spaces there. And all of that's being restored and, valet services brought back in. We also have a substantial amount of overflow parking in the area should it be required, that we've worked on, with BMO Tower and Plaza East and some surrounding facilities. So parking is definitely not an issue. You're absolutely right, though. Other than, large weekend weddings, so many people, already downtown and people walk to the building and, we just don't have as much of the drive-in traffic weekdays as the club had, 20 years ago.
So I want to talk a little bit about the membership structure and who has access to this, because I know this was at one time for members only, private club. You seem to be kind of taking some of the retail aspects. I don't know about the health club facility, the apartments, the Airbnb. What is that conversation like with such a closely held entity, like a 100-year-old membership? And how do you kind of work through that?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that question, and there's a lot of interesting elements to the project within that question. One of one of the actual impetus for this relationship of the Milwaukee Athletic Club and bringing in a private developer originated because the Milwaukee Athletic Club is a nonprofit. It's a 501c7, which is a fraternal membership organization. As a nonprofit and the sole owner of the entire building, the MAC did not qualify for the use of federal or state historic tax credits. It's a violation under the IRS Section 42, which outlines the use of tax credits for the program. So to bring in, the nearly $15 million of tax credit equity, the MAC couldn't retain ownership of its building. Otherwise, that $15 million was just inaccessible, right? So that simple issue is what originated having to change the ownership structure of the physical real estate. And that's where Jeffers and myself came in, which was, okay, well, we can put the ownership into a different entity structure so we can access and comply with tax credits while still giving MAC the rights to use the building, as if it were a tenant or, just a perpetual user. At the same, so that's kind of like the tax credit side of it, right? That's the nuts and bolts of why did the ownership regime have to change to bring in all this tax credit equity. The other issue is even within that regime change, a nonprofit cannot own or lease, they can't be a tenant of more than a certain percentage of the square footage in a building, or you have the same exact violation occur. And that really wasn't a problem here because the MAC had recognized that it really didn't need to own or operate the hotel any longer, back when it was a hotel. The MAC didn't really need to own and operate the event center any longer. What the MAC wanted to do was retain a private athletic and social club for its members, right? And so what we did is created a very elegant, probably somewhat complicated, but very elegant solution in how the MAC has essentially perpetual rights to operate the social and athletic club in the building, using about 65,000 square feet of the space exclusively, where it's member only. And then the other roughly 120,000 square feet is technically open to the public. The apartments are, you can call them open to the public, but the apartments are for rent to the public, right? You have to be a resident to access the apartments. We took the first floor retail space, which the MAC didn't have a specific use for, and we said, great, that'll be wonderful third-party tenants. And I mentioned we're trying to market those for compatible uses, like a full service restaurant and like a spa salon user, which we had one prior to COVID, but that industry has been impacted as well. So we're marketing for a new one. And then the event center, members will have priority reservations of events. So if a member has a wedding coming up, they get first selection of wedding dates, for example. But once we get to a certain date, the wedding venue and private events for corporate lunches, breakfast, nonprofit events, the event center is now wide open to the public. And what's really neat about that from a pure business plan perspective is that another restriction under the MAC's nonprofit status is that they were prohibited from publicly advertising the event center because it was unrelated business income, which could have caused problems for their nonprofit status. So kind of part and parcel to solving for the project itself, now we can actually outwardly market, promote, and advertise this magnificent event center that it is available to the public. And so you don't have to be a MAC member to book a corporate breakfast or a lunch or a wedding. So the building has really, the physical building has become a private public hybrid while still retaining all of the MAC programmed member only areas.
How big is that event space?
It's about it's just under 17,500 square feet.
So what does that break down people?
The grand ballroom can seat around 325. The other areas are between 20 to 150. So if we have all event spaces occupied simultaneously, we can host 600 people at the same time on site.
Great. I know that's, so are all these different aspects of the project expected to be open December, or what's kind of the phasing in of timelines?
Yeah, December we'll have everything open according to our contractor today. We are still on track. CG Schmidt is our contractor. They have not missed a date yet. They're doing a wonderful job, and we are right on track for December. So unless anything unexpected occurs, we plan to open in December. We will ramp up public events slowly. So we're focused initially on leasing the apartments, reopening the MAC member areas. So doing a great job at the MAC rooftop bar and restaurant and the MAC athletic areas. So the member experience and leasing the apartments is our primary objective on day one. We will, over the course of the next year or two, we will ramp up the public event business partially, because there just isn't a lot of demand for that right now. And until the public health concerns are kind of behind us, and people book weddings typically, not 3 months out, but a year or more out. So we're really looking more to 2023 for the wedding and special event business, which gives us time to get the building up and running and kind of grow into that part of it.
So from a retail perspective, you mentioned you did have a user identified. Have you altered your thoughts? I mean, given there's so much vacancy, especially first floor vacancy along Wisconsin Avenue, did anything change in your thinking, or do you have such a premier product and a premier offering that you think this is gonna go?
That is probably the biggest outlier that I don't have a good answer to. There is so much to focus on that, for example, the 4,500 square foot restaurant space on the first floor. It's a great space. The volume is awesome. It has a ton of visibility. It's a great location. The project itself creates a ton of demand for it as well. So we like the thought of that, but with over 22% of restaurants permanently closed across the country, it's also something that we recognize is hard to fully commit to that until things have kind of started to recover and we see what that tenant demand looks like. The spa salon use, I think we'll absolutely find the right operator for that. It's 1,600 square feet. We have tons of built-in demand for that. I really think that one will probably land and program appropriately. Could be right. We could find it could be a different use for that other first floor retail space. We're certainly not beholden to it, but it's set up for it, and the support mechanicals are still intact for the kitchen. So, it's the way we've left it for now.
No, that's great. So you are not known for taking on easy projects, right? I mean, and this one is certainly no different. I know you've got work at the Grand Avenue Mall. You've got this very important project at the MAC. What stands out about this project compared to some of the others? And even if you want to touch on some of the challenges, this one seems to be unique.
Yeah, this one is really unique. I think what really stands out, every historic rehabilitation project has learnings and has surprises just dealing with 100-year-old buildings. So kind of setting aside that which is inherent in every historic rehab project in its own way, never two the same. The unique part of this is that as things evolved, we really realized that this is 1 part real estate development and 5 parts business development, and the operating business side of the equation is, in my opinion, as much or even a heavier lift than the real estate development project. And now that we're sitting here, less than 9 months from opening the doors, I can tell you that all of our teams, Jeffers, myself, Joe Kurth, our COO, like we find ourselves spending, 65-70% of our time on the operations of this business versus the actual, brick and mortar real estate development now that construction is underway. And we get into, you're right, we get into unusual projects. The 3rd Street Market Hall at the Avenue is a 40,000 square foot food hall that also is being constructed during COVID, preparing to open this fall. And with our partner Omar Sheikh, there is a substantial operating element to that. However, all of our food hall tenants are in fact tenants. We're not operating the food stalls, right? So we still, although there's a big marketing plan behind that and cohesive operations and branding, and it is more of an operating business than, leasing the food court we had on the 3rd floor before we shut them all down. We're still kind of more landlord tenant in that, right? Whereas the MAC, the developer team will directly employ nearly 80 employees to operate the MAC for the members. So it is truly a very, very intense operating business, which I love. I'm in the business of operating businesses, so I like that, and we can combine that with real estate. I think that's why it perhaps ended up being in a mix of potential developers. There was really only one that was willing to take the challenge, which was myself and Josh.
Yeah, no, that's great. We need that vision, right? And willing to take the risk and be able to adapt to the changes as they come up. Nobody would have foreseen this, but now you can add this to the list, right?
Right. Well, and I will say we get forwarded messages from other private athletic clubs that are struggling in the country or for sale. And to date, I can, with a high degree of certainty, tell you this is probably project 1 of 1 for us.
Project 1 of 1. Okay. Because I know that they exist. I mean, we've all traveled, and you've got the Chicago Athletic Club or the Denver Athletic Club. So, and I don't know, when you say 1 of 1 for you, were there other clubs that you looked to that adopted this type of model?
We've learned, so we have toured and researched a lot of private clubs across the country. Some of the best ones, like the Detroit Athletic Club, Multnomah, the Jonathan Club, just to name a few. Those are considered probably the top 3 in the country, all doing incredibly well, strong membership, great programming, wonderful branding. There is a recipe for success in a private athletic city club that some clubs have certainly been able to maintain. That said, in talking to a lot of the comparable clubs across the country, the MAC has really risen to be the spotlight of this new hybrid approach, because this model is also the first of its kind, where there is kind of this, private / nonprofit, and then also this hybrid public-private use of the building. You mentioned the Chicago Athletic Association, which shut its membership club down, sold the building, and now the entire building is open to the public. The club's gone, right? It's still called the CAA, but you have a hotel there, you have some food and beverage outlets. So they didn't even stop at a hybrid option. They just shut it down and sold the building, and it was redeveloped. This is a very unique, one-of-a-kind model. I think it's very reflective of Milwaukee's community, which I think is kind of cool about it. Like, hey, wait, there's a way to figure this out and make this work for everybody, and retain and expand this 100-year-old athletic club into what it's going to look like into the future, and really modernize it and modernize its brand. So I think we are this project is a case study in the industry of private athletic and city clubs.
No, that's great, because I mean, we have 6 or 7, I think, in Milwaukee right now. I wonder how does this compare to, what's going at the Wisconsin club or the University club or the Milwaukee club? And I'm assuming you guys are just out of that game now because of your operating model. Is that?
Yeah. It's just a totally different project, and that the member, the Milwaukee Athletic Club membership is about, it's such a unique membership with the amenities and the programming and the facilities that you really can't get anywhere else. So the MAC is really kind of in a class of its own.
Great. I have a question about apartments. What percentage of the apartments are leased up so far?
None, because we have a member preview pre-leasing that starts in June. So members have a couple of months to get on a priority waiting list. And then right after that, and so late summer, early fall, we'll actually start our pre-leasing marketing to the public at that point. Based on just kind of inbound demand, I think we will be leased up quite a bit ahead of our projections, though.
And it's how many apartments? You were doing 92 keys for the hotel, but what's the apartment?
52.
52. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have a question that's not about the MAC, but about your other business related to parking. So we talk a lot about office users and people coming back downtown to work. I know parking is always a topic, and it's probably an indicator of the vitality and the vibrancy of downtown Milwaukee. How are you seeing that? I know you have, how many stalls do you manage?
Yeah, we manage about 65,000 spaces in 13 different cities, and it's really market specific. We own, I think we own 13 parking assets, so about 7,000 spaces ourselves, and then we third party manage the rest of them. And out of our whole portfolio, office, retail, residential, parking absolutely has gotten hammered the hardest out of any asset class that I'm involved in. And, yet you look at sort of the utilization, and our first quarter of this year was a very marked improvement over last year in terms of people coming back and using parking again. As soon as there was limited attendance at the Bucks Arena, for example, we actually had some of our record numbers. We attribute that to perhaps people being more comfortable driving their own car to a game versus taking Uber or Lyft. We're not 100% sure of that, but there are some correlations there. So it's certainly a new paradigm around what all mobility looks like for a downtown community. And it seems as if the larger the market, the greater the decline has been. So, for example, our business in Denver and Minneapolis, well, Minneapolis for reasons above and beyond the pandemic, unfortunately, there's been a more substantial decline in people using downtown office space, whereas smaller markets like Duluth or Fargo, almost no change during the pandemic in terms of parking utilization. And then you have destination locations like the town of Breckenridge. This past year, our parking revenues in the town of Breckenridge were, we set a record high historically over the past decade. People are comfortable driving places, and Denver's an hour and a half away, right? So drive to destinations have been just absolutely crushing it during COVID. So it's really unique. It's really location specific, market specific. The $1 million question, which I'm sure you're getting at, is what does parking look like down the road if there's more hybrid work schedules? I think we view parking as a combination of a lot of different ways that you price products. And for example, in our Denver market, for as long as I can remember, nobody came to work Mondays and Fridays. It was always a Tuesday through Thursday in-office schedule, and then remote Mondays and Fridays. I don't know if it's because they're up playing in the mountains or what they're doing, but that's just the Denver culture. However, we have some of our highest priced monthly parking contracts in the city of Denver, right? City of Milwaukee, by comparison, has some of the lowest priced parking across the entire country. We've had a lot of people suspend their monthly contracts during COVID, but not as many as you'd think. And here we have things like, I don't know, there's not, even pre-COVID, commuting wasn't terrible. It's a very accessible city by car. We don't, unfortunately have a great mass transit program, so a lot of people do rely on their cars to get to work. And more, we're just seeing the larger organizations and the mid-sized organizations recognize that in-person collaboration is invaluable, and a permanent work from home strategy is not going to happen. Have we learned that a hybrid work format is beneficial? Sure, great. I know for my company, that's what we're doing. And, we'll collaborate, 3-4 days a week, and I'm sure people will routinely use a day at home to just get their crunched work done and do that. We price parking products accordingly, right? So a lot of our clients are like, hey, do I have to project lower parking revenue in the future? Absolutely not. We do not predict a decline in total parking revenues as an asset class. We do predict a substantial shift in how people use their parking assets. So direct example, we created a new product called FlexPark. And FlexPark is a product that somebody signs up for, and they buy a block of parking that they redeem on demand for a certain number of days over the course of the month. So they can kind of use their parking when they need it. A little more costly per day than a monthly contract, but you still have a lot of that flexibility. So you'll just see things like that happen, where the product profile and the options for the consumer will change to adapt to how they use their parking spaces and their mobility needs.
No, that's great. We could do a whole lunch and learn on parking. I know that's how I first came to know you, is parking.
I know, my favorite topic.
I know. Okay, just a final question, and it's usually the question where I say to you, what can we do for you as a commercial real estate community? What are some of the click-through items, as we look forward?
Well, the MAC is centered around building relationships, and it will be the premier. It will be like the premier organization in town to belong to and do business at, and extend your wellness. And if you're not a member, I would just highly suggest considering it. There is a pre-opening marketing campaign that will launch in June here. So if you're not a member, I'd watch for that. So it's not so much what can the community do for the project. I think this project can do a lot for the community, honestly. And, just consider how much you can extend your efficiency in your professional life and your wellness by taking a look at the new MAC, really.
Great. All right.
Oh, and if anybody has a 4,500 square foot restaurant user, that would be helpful too.
Okay, that's what we were getting at. All right, Tony Janowick, thank you so much for your time. I think we covered a lot of ground. I still have 30 questions to go, but nevertheless, I can take care of that on email. We really appreciate you. We appreciate you believing in this project and believing in our city.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite. I'm happy to answer the email ones too that you can circulate.
Okay, I will share your email address. How's that?
Sure.
Okay. All right, have a good day, everyone.
All right. Thank you.